Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, in yesterday's video you may or may not have noticed some audio issues, some random glitching and crackling and popping. A lot of you pointed it out in the comments. I did put it in the pinned comment, and I caught it while I was editing. I was way too far along to fix anything really and re-record it. I couldn't really do anything about it. On this channel, just for some reference, over the last while I've been having audio issues, and normally I just re-record sections, and they've been very inconsistent and they've been present on multiple devices. I've changed components, I've changed cables, and I'm beginning to wonder if it's the microphone that I'm using or my audio interface, which is a Focusrite Scarlett Solo. I really don't know at this point in time, but if they're continuing to be present here and there, I might just have to completely swap my microphone setup and hope for the best. And on a side note here, I do appreciate the tips and suggestions people have been sending in to try to rectify the issue and try to diagnose the problem. It's been a very interesting journey over this last while, and for reference, it's just the raw audio. I'm not adding anything to the audio, so it's none of that. The only thing I do is increase the gain for YouTube, and if I don't, people complain that my videos too quiet. So I don't know here. I'm really frustrated with the setup, but hopefully this video everything is okay. And speaking about frustrated, next up here we're talking about Duckstation. And it seems as if Stenzek is not quite yet ready to throw in the towel on Linux support for Duckstation. Now, we talked about this one the other day when there were some headlines that I'm pretty sure I called a little bit dramatic and were a little bit misleading and misrepresenting the situation. We went over that in detail. Anyways here, Stenzek has cleared things up a little bit, and it seems that, yeah, he's not quite ready to throw in the towel on Linux. However, he is requesting stuff to be removed off the AUR. I do recommend checking out my previous video, and like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. I don't hide my sources. Why would I hide my own source? Anyways, I do recommend checking out that previous video for more information here, but at the same time, Duckstation, here was the previous headline that was a little misleading. Duckstation dev announced end of Linux support, and he is actively blocking Arch Linux builds now. And as a quick refresher, here's what Stenzek initially said. However, it seems that Arch users would rather use broken packages and keep complaining to me instead of their packager. I specifically forbid packages for Duckstation, and there's no way to request removal of these packages without handing my details over to a distribution I want nothing to do with. So this is step one. Next step will be removing Linux support entirely, because I'm sick of the headaches and hacks for an operating system that only comprises 2% of the user base, and I don't even use myself. But I'm hoping the Linux community will be reasonable, because as someone giving up my free time and not being compensated in any way, I shouldn't have to deal with this. Now, since then, there's another quote by Stenzek that is getting a little bit of publicity, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to verify the source of this one. I went over to the Duckstation Discord and didn't see this listed, but this is what's currently being talked about. So reportedly, Stenzek has said, since people seem to be spreading misinformation, yay. Let's make some things clear. Linux support is not being removed from Duckstation. I have no immediate plans to do that. I've created a deletion request for the AUR package that is causing headaches. If they can remove it, that solves everything and we can go back to business as usual. If they don't, then we'll see. I don't really feel like playing a cat and mouse game of making changes that prevent it from running in that environment. It's easier just to walk away. Now, in my opinion here, I think Stenzek is a very polarizing and controversial individual and arguably very opinionated. And in terms of misinformation and not wanting to shut down Linux and continuing on, maybe that's a great thing. But at the same time, I can see how some people would be scared that Stenzek would stop Linux support altogether, considering he appears to have a history of threatening things. I mean, taking a look here on GitHub, and this is right from Stenzek, he says, if any of this turns into harassment, then I'll just shut the whole thing down. And that's talking about Duckstation altogether when he was changing licenses. And here's another quote from Stenzek, and I think this one is in response to a conversation that Stenzek had with someone regarding GPL licensing in the AUR and that whole situation. And Stenzek says, I mean, it's pretty clear these people are just something. I tried to reason with the guy above and they just came back with threats. They don't own my code. You're not entitled to anything. That's the way it is. And the fact that they think they can copy GPL code without attribution proves how clueless they are. So really, when it comes down to it, the only person whose opinion matters is mine. I try to consider others, but not at the cost of my own sanity. And for the record, I don't necessarily know if I saw a threat there or what Stenzek considers a threat. So that is something to take into account. And then Stenzek says, by the way, the spiteful part of me wants to just drop it so that I'm not rewarding such behavior. But I'm not that impulsive these days and too busy anyway, so the net result will most likely be nothing changes. Still hoping that the AUR will action the request, so at least I stop getting hassled about it. So we're going to have to wait and see here moving forward to see the future of Duckstation on Linux and what might happen. My gut tells me everything may be absolutely fine, but who knows here. My advice, and take it or leave it at whatever, but I would just say my advice would be to probably not directly engage with Stenzek. Don't directly bother them. Don't directly suggest anything. Because that's where it seems the source of all of the controversy comes from, directly engaging with Stenzek. And also on a side note, it appears that Duckstation probably should never have been open source. I mean, if this is what's happening, if Stenzek is getting headaches because of all of this stuff and wants to be in charge and control and not want people to copy and modify his code and all of that stuff, probably should never have been open source in the first place. That might be a hot take, but based on this here, I don't necessarily think it is. And continuing to talk about emulation and different platforms, next up here we're talking about Emuready. Now, for those who may or may not be aware, Emuready is a fairly new open source initiative that's trying to be community focused to talk about game compatibility with emulators and specific devices. Now, I would say overall here, to check game compatibility with an emulator, it's probably best to check the actual emulator's compatibility reports. However, for specific devices and specific settings, generally those emulator compatibility reports do not have that level of detail. And that's where Emuready comes in. We've talked about Emuready in the past here. This is community driven, it's open source, and right now at the time of filming, they have 1,256 handheld compatibility reports, 33 PC compatibility reports, 1,158 supported games, 42 emulators, and 479 handhelds. And here's a quick example of what the compatibility reports look like. So this is for the Anbernic RG406H on RPCSX, so for PS3 here and Dead Space 2. It is listed as playable, and they say here it is playable most of the time, but may experience FPS drops during combat. And they even have the settings that were used in order to achieve it. Anyways, the big news here is that they're developing an Android app. And it seems to be shaping up very quickly. Unfortunately, I don't have a release date, but the developer has shared some footage. I don't know if this will make it into the final version here, but it does look very interesting. I mean, take a look at this menu under Quick Actions, Browse Games, View Reports, Submit Report, and Launch Test. So based on what I'm seeing here in this video, it appears that the Emuready app is going to work with emulators and almost be a front end, and seems to work with Gaiden, a Nintendo Switch emulator. So let me know your thoughts about Emuready in the comments below. I mean, right now it's mainly used for compatibility reports, but it seems like it's going to be shaping up to be a one-stop for all of emulation. If it is a front end here, I mean, if it works with emulators, can sort and browse ROMs through it, see compatibility reports, see what games work with certain systems, this could be incredibly useful. And speaking about incredibly useful, next up we're talking about Felix 86. Now, for those who may not be aware, with Felix 86 you can run x86 and x86 64 games on RISC-V. And Felix 86 just got a brand new update to version 25.08 and introduced an incredibly useful feature. So without further delay, if you're a fan of Steam and wanted to run Steam on RISC-V, well, Felix 86 may have you covered. So they say here we were able to run the Chromium browser on Felix 86. And yes, Steam is up and running. If you are curious about this and wanted to see it in action, Felix 86 also has a video on YouTube showcasing how to set it up and install it. And I would say this is a huge breakthrough for Felix 86 and a huge quality of life improvement for those looking to play Steam games on RISC-V in a very interesting way. And continuing to talk about emulation, next up here we're talking about Game Boy and Game Boy Color emulation with SameBoy. And SameBoy just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 1.0.2 is the latest update for SameBoy. And they say this version is backwards compatible with save states from SameBoy 0.14.3 and newer, as well as save states from any BESS compliant emulator. And there's a bunch of fixes and brand new stuff here. Now, I would argue a lot of the new stuff here is for Mac and iOS. For example, the iOS front end will now alert the user if automatic save states could not be created for some reason, for example, a lack of disk space. And the iOS front end will now ask for confirmations before resetting a ROM. On top of that, they've improved frame skipping during turbo mode. Turbo mode can now have a configurable speed cap on all front ends. SameBoy now supports the new menu bar on iPadOS 26. Minor UI improvements were also done for older versions of macOS and iOS, and even more. There is quite a bit in here. Again, if you're interested and wanted to learn more about it, like everything we talk about, links are in the description below. SameBoy is 100% free and open source. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation and CTGP 7. And it's being reported here that CTGP 7 has anti-piracy now, and I guess this is a screenshot from it. Azuhar forks that directly encourage piracy are not supported. Please use official builds. And then there's a box there to click that says piracy is no fun. From my understanding, this applies to all forks of Azuhar, especially one known as Azuhar Plus, which is a fork of Azuhar that restores some features. Now, I would say that Azuhar Plus is controversial to say the least in its own right. And the main person behind CTGP 7 and one of the main people behind Azuhar have asked Azuhar Plus to change their name and logo to try to not associate it with Azuhar. If you are interested in learning more about this, I'd recommend checking out this issue that was raised by Pablo MK7 over on Azuhar Plus. I mean, to me, it kind of makes sense. They say here that they're discomforted with the existence of this fork. They've worked very hard on ways to distance ourselves as much as possible from piracy so that 3DS emulation can continue development as safely as possible, and new developers can contribute to the preservation efforts with nothing to worry about legally. Now, whether or not those changes to CTGP 7 were a result of this is up for debate. I would say that this probably factored into those changes. And I would also say this request from Pablo MK7 and Azuhar is not unreasonable at all. I mean, all they're asking for is Azuhar Plus to change the name and logo. And Azuhar Plus seems pretty darn reluctant. I mean, they did change their logo, but they didn't change their name. And I'm assuming that Azuhar Plus wants to be associated with Azuhar to gain popularity and to gain people using it. Could be wrong with that, I don't know, but I mean, this seemed like an entirely reasonable request. But moving on from that, after opening the can of worms a little bit, we'll put the lid back on it. Next up, we're still talking about emulation here, and this time with Hypseus Singe. I might have mispronounced that really bad. Anyways, this emulator just got a brand new update, and for those who are unaware, this is an SDL2 version of Daphne and Singe Laserdisc game emulation. So at the time of filming, version 2.11.6 is the latest update, and we've got a bunch of fixes, optimizations, and new features. Framework-based games can now be created as zip LUA ROMs. They've added the ability to filter ABS mice, aka light guns, and new EVDev many mouse detection. Two-player gun games are now playable using multiple game controller guns. On top of that, bezels now display correctly on secondary screens, and there's still a whole lot more in here. And speaking about a whole lot more, next up we're talking about MAME. MAME stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Multiple Arcade Machine Emulation, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. Anyways, MAME version 0.279 has just dropped. And this one, like always, is packed with a bunch of stuff. So they say here, building on the work in recent releases, this month you'll get to see proper lighting and fixes for logic bugs in Sega Model 2 games. Philips CDI emulation keeps improving, including better cursor behavior and XA audio fixes. On top of that, and this one to me is really interesting, MAME now emulates the snow effect on early ZX Spectrum models caused by memory refresh cycles interfering with video RAM accessories. Talk about accuracy. They then say various graphical issues in Konami games have been fixed, and there are noticeable improvements in graphics in some Namco System 32 games. And I mean, that's not even getting into the thick of it. There is so much here. A whole bunch of bugs have been fixed. There's a whole bunch of new working systems, new working clones, and even more. I highly recommend checking out this site for more detailed information because there is a lot here. Next up, we're talking about something that's getting quite a bit of traction online, and it's a brand new video here from Moore's Law is Dead. And it's about the PlayStation 6 home console, codenamed Orion, and the PlayStation 6 handheld, codenamed Canis. Now, if you are interested in learning more about this, I'd recommend checking out his video, and I'll link it in the description below. The video is about half an hour long, 31 minutes and 42 seconds, and it is currently a rumor. So I guess the rumored PS6 here will be backwards compatible with PS5 and PS4, and that includes the handheld, so both console and handheld will be backwards compatible. And I guess they will be releasing in fall 2027 or early 2028. And for the handheld here, I guess it's going to have a micro SD card slot, an M.2 SSD slot, haptic vibration, dual mics, and a touchscreen, which I will say is kind of table stakes for a handheld nowadays, especially a premium one. And I guess the USB-C port will have video out capabilities. But let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. What do you think the future of the PS6 is going to hold? Do you think it will be a home console and a handheld? And do you think the handheld will be able to compete against something like the ROG Ally X and the Steam Deck and a Nintendo Switch? And on top of that, can you believe that it's already been almost 5 years since the PS5 was released? It just, time flies. It feels like the PS5 was just released a couple of years ago. Anyways, here I'm assuming we're going to hear more and more and more about the PS6 as time goes on, given the fact that the PS5 has been out for a while. And continuing to talk about upcoming stuff in consoles. Next up here, we're talking about Battlefield 6. If you're excited about Battlefield 6, they will be having an open beta, and if you wanted to learn more, details will be, well, within the link in the description below anyway. The beta will be occurring between August 9th and 10th and 14th to the 17th. And if you're wondering about this game headed to the Switch, I guess there's no intention for EA to bring this game to the Switch. And on top of that, if you're wondering about Linux here, I don't believe Battlefield 6 will be compatible with Linux just due to the anti-cheat. And speaking about stuff being restricted in certain areas, next up we're talking about something being restricted for certain ages. And it's being rumored here that GTA Online will soon require age verification. So this rumor was started by Tez, who is known to be an insider, and they say here Rockstar is planning to implement age assurance checks in the near future, rolling them out by region. You may need to verify your age to access GTA Online, or certain features like phone messages, text chat, Snapmatic may be restricted until you verify your age. We're going to have to wait and see moving forward, but I'm assuming if this turns out to be true, we're going to see more and more games and services get in line with UK's Online Safety Act. Next up here, we're talking about Stop Killing Games, and the petition in the EU titled Stop Destroying Video Games is now closed. No more signatures can be added to the list, but this thing has been extremely successful so far. Now, unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't know if the campaign is going to be successful. I mean, it's got many steps to go through. This was really just the first, or maybe the second. I think setting it up was the first, getting signatures might have been the second. But anyways, it has been successful so far, at the very least, for getting awareness and support around the issue. I mean, taking a look at how many signatures they collected, 1,448,271. That is a lot. So we're going to have to wait and see moving forward here and to see if the success continues. But right now, I would say that this is very positive. Even if it turns out a bunch of signatures were fake, there's still 1.4 million signatures there. So even if a couple 100,000 were fake at the very worst, I would imagine, it's still well over the 1 million mark. And speaking about waiting to see what happens moving forward, next up we're talking about itch.io. Now, we've talked quite a bit about itch.io recently, them and Steam, for their recent delisting of arguably very controversial games. And we'll leave it at that and not open up that can of worms. And that was at the demands of the payment processors, another very controversial topic. which I believe was fueled by Collective Games. And I'd be very curious to know the size, Collective Shout, not Collective Games. And I'd be very curious to know the size of Collective Shout. I mean, is it tens of thousands of people? Is it hundreds of thousands of people demanding that these games be taken down? Or is it just a few? Like, I really don't know here. Anyways, taking a look at itch.io, it appears that they are re-indexing some of the adult NSFW content that they took down. Stuff that wasn't being charged, free stuff. So they say here, today we are re-indexing free adult NSFW content. We are still in ongoing discussions with payment processors and will be reintroducing paid content slowly to ensure we can confidently support the widest range of creators in the long term. So again, I'm very curious to see what happens moving forward. I'm curious to see what is reinstated, what is acceptable to be free adult NSFW content, and if some of those highly controversial games will be reinstated in some way, shape, or form. And speaking about games, but not highly controversial, next up we're talking about Earthion, which is a brand new game that was being designed for the Sega Genesis and also Steam here. If you are interested in this game has now released on Steam. Taking a look at the reviews, it's got a very positive overall review score. I don't see a whole lot of negativity surrounding it. And the price of this one is less than $30. If you've played Earthion, I haven't yet. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And continuing to talk about games, next up we're talking about Nintendo. And yesterday Nintendo had their Nintendo Direct, and it seemed a lot of people were let down, at least reading comments in chat. But taking a look, they unveiled a bunch of stuff here. If you're a fan of 2D, HD 2D stuff, you're going to be a big fan of the release. Because there were a couple of big announcements from Square Enix, including Octopath Traveler 0, as well as, where is it here? The Adventures of Elliot. Additionally, they showcased stuff for Borderlands 4, Shinobi Art of Vengeance, and a bunch of other stuff, including Hello Kitty Island and NBA Bounce and Yakuza. There was quite a bit in here. Unfortunately, there was no Metroid stuff. There was Zelda stuff, though, but if you're not necessarily a fan of Hyrule Warriors, you wouldn't be a fan of the announcements. But if you are a fan of Hyrule Warriors, as well as the recent Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you might be a fan of this new game, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Overall, I would say it was an okay Nintendo Direct. I wouldn't necessarily say it was the best thing ever, and I wouldn't say it was horrible. I was a little bit disappointed not to see certain games, but overall, for just a Direct, there was quite a bit in here. And taking a look here as well, one thing I do like of what happened, if you take a look at the thumbnails, you don't even have to click on the video to determine whether or not it's strictly for the Switch 2 or also for the Switch. I mean, Octopath Traveler 0 is also for the Switch. And if I scroll down just a little bit here, there may be some surprises for you, like Final Fantasy Tactics. That one is also for the Switch. Scroll down as well, we've got Pac-Man, EA Sports FC 26, Plants vs. Zombies. I sometimes call it Planets vs. Zombies for some reason. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I was surprised to see that this is also going to be released on the old Switch. But it does seem that more and more games are going to be Switch 2 exclusives. I would say the majority of them here are Switch 2 exclusives. So if you were hoping that the Nintendo Switch was going to carry on like the PlayStation 4 did, or arguably still is, you might be disappointed that it does seem there's going to be a pretty hard shift and quick shift to the Switch 2. Also, it's worth noting here that Monster Hunter Stories 3 was announced for the Switch 2, as well as Persona 3 Reload. Next up here, this one's a quick one, and I would argue a pretty funny one. It turns out that Apple Support, their Weibo account, had accidentally posted a promotional video for the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. I've got no idea what happened behind the scenes, and I don't know if we'll ever find out the real details and everything that's going on there, or if Apple will ever talk about it again. But I just think it's hilarious that Apple was promoting a Samsung product, probably something they were really not happy about. And speaking about not being happy about stuff, next up we're talking about Google, and it appears that Google has lost their appeal to keep the Epic Game Store off the Google Play Store. But it does seem they're going to appeal yet again. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what this secondary appeal of sorts would even be. I mean, I'm not a legal expert, and I'm very confused at the whole situation. I'm wondering if Google is doing this just to delay Epic from getting on the Google Play Store, or if they actually think they can overturn something. Time will tell on that one, but they say here, I guess an earlier version of this article stated Google confirmed it would appeal to the Supreme Court, but it did not actually specify which court. While Google did say it will appeal, it could ask for a review from the full Ninth Circuit first. Let me know your thoughts about this one. And speaking about stuff releasing, last up here, we're talking about Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. And if you were looking forward to this game, it has just released. And over on Steam, it's got a very positive review score. And on a side note here, this game is currently 10% off, and it is also Steam Deck verified. Now, taking a look, it seems the critic review of this game is really good. And I haven't really seen any major negativity towards the game yet. I mean, very positive is not overwhelmingly positive, but it is still pretty darn good. I haven't checked this one out yet. If you have, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And if it's on your wish list, it may be worth checking out. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.